Well, it's super late. Yeah, I'm extremely tired. Seems like the perfect time to do some Netrunner commentary, right? That seems to be the normal thing, normal time that I get around to doing this anyway. As always, if you see your game streamed here and it makes you uncomfortable, that's trying to find a colorful way to describe me. Some sentient AI? I don't know. Some wacko is online streaming your games. Just let me know. I'll add your name to a list and I won't stream your game anymore. That being said, chances are extremely low that I think you have anyone or too terribly many people watch this, so we'll just move on from there and jump right into the first game of the night. Tonight we have Haley Kaplan versus Wayland Building a Better World. Our game opens up with a lot of attention from the corp being focused turn one on a new remote. Sorry, not turn one. We're actually 2 turns deep into this. And then Haley seems to have thrown down a very early Procon and spent the entirety of no, she hyperdrivered, so not the entirety of turn 2 proconning, but the first 4 clicks of turn 2 proconning. 4 clicks and 4 cards doesn't seem like too bad of a thing. Haley installs a simul chip and an Akamatsu, followed up by a Harbinger and another hyperdriver. It's going to give her a lot of forward momentum there. The corp, completely ignoring their centrals, decides to put another piece of ice on the remote and advances an installed card behind the server, in the server. Back to Haley, hyperdrivers popped again. Just giving her more forward momentum to set up. Typically Haley's don't use hyperdrivers as some sort of combo piece. It's just another cheap program for them to install to trigger their ID and gets them a little bit of forward momentum at the same time. It also can be viewed sort of as a card that thins the deck, even though hyperdriver on its own doesn't draw you cards. It's still a net +1 unit, right? Because you spend a click to install it, you spend a credit to play it, but you gain 3 back. Oh, of course, you could also look at it that you also have to draw it. So maybe it's it would be better to be thought of as a net 0, no plus, no negative, but at the same time, again, thinning your deck by 1 card. Anyway, the corp double advances the single advance card, so we have 3 total advancement tokens on the card, and then drops another hedge fund. They have plenty of money. Of course, Building a Better World getting an extra 3 credits from total from these 3 transaction cards being played. The difference between 12 credits and 15. Back to Haley. Haley has plenty of programs, plenty of hardware on the table, simul chips and Akamatsus, as well as an SMC. She decides to stim hack and uses the SMC money, uses the stim hack money to pay for the SMC for a Stargate, and then installs what looks like an Ngolo out of hand. So effectively putting Stargate and Ngolo down on the table at the very meager cost of 2 credits, when you consider the SMC costs 2 to use. She then immediately, after pulling a nice City Works project from HQ, just goes right into a Stargate run on R&D, and this is exactly what she needs to be doing. She can't just let the corp set up with this big remote without protecting the centrals. That's just kind of a greedy play in general to just assume that Haley would continue to spend time setting up, and perhaps a lesser Haley would have. It's very easy for shapers to play solitaire for the first 5 to 8 turns, but luckily Haley here on turn 4 decides to start taking an advantage of these completely uniced central servers, and is rewarded. Looks like the Stargate run on R&D sees a The Future Is Now, a Rashida Jaheim, and a Mausolus, and she decides to go ahead and trash the Mausolus. I think I agree with that choice. The less ice the corp has, the more Haley can run rampant in these central servers. Doesn't even bother to go back in for the Rashida or The Future Is Now. Just says, you know what? I don't care. You can have either one. It's fine. I'm a little curious why she didn't go back in. I think... How many clicks did she have after that? She had 2 clicks. Because we see right after that she plays Diesel and Procon. Yeah, it's a little curious here, because this is actually going to allow the Corp to res their Arella Salvatore, score the Project Atlas that they already had triple advance, automatically install The Future Is Now that they top decked, double advance that, in addition to then also again triggering Arella Salvatore's ability after scoring The Future Is Now, and using their last click to dedication ceremony, the City Works project. I doubt Haley's really in a position to contest the City Works project, and now suddenly, in basically a single turn, of course the Corp isn't going to be able to score this until the next turn, but basically within a single turn's actions, the Corp just jumps up 6 points. Now, if instead Haley had ran in there and either scored The Future Is Now or trashed the Rashida, well, I mean, I guess the Rashida was underneath The Future Is Now, so trashing the Rashida is irrelevant, but if she had just gone in and scored The Future Is Now, I don't think that any of this would have happened, because it's very possible, we don't actually get to see, but it's very possible the Corp pulled this City Works project with The Future Is Now's ID ability, or agenda ability. Now, of course, the Project City Works is going to be scored, which allows another new card to be installed in the server with an agenda token on it due to Arella Salvatore's ability. And suddenly we're on game point in a very scary situation for Haley, where Haley was kind of in control of this in some degree, and now just kind of isn't. Yeah, and I mean, it's just... This is game. Wow. And it was kind of a greedy play by the Corp, but the Corp wasn't bluffing here. You know, they weren't being greedy without the power to back this up. I mean, look at this. This is a turn 6 win from a building a better world. And I think this is funny because they Project Nisei re-allows San City Grid, but instead of seeing San City Grid, we just see all these Arella Salvatore decks. It's kind of funny. Arella Salvatore is not like a super new card. I believe it came out in what, Rain and Reverie, if I'm reading that symbol correctly on the card, but I feel like lately we have just seen nothing but Arella Salvatore decks from the Corp, and this is kind of why. I'm really, really, really curious why Haley didn't run. I thought this was brilliant. You know, she's setting up, she's doing her normal shaper thing, and then she switches gears and goes right into HQ, gets a lucky steal on the Project City Works, but hey, luck is sometimes part of the game, right? But then she sees The Future Is Now, she sees the Rashida, trashes the Mausolus, which I agree with, and then plays Diesel and Procons. And I feel like you would want to go back in for both of these, like both The Future Is Now and the Rashida. But I think perhaps the thought process was Haley felt so confident having trashed the only other piece of ice that they thought was coming the corp's way. They thought maybe they had plenty of time, that they weren't going to feel threatened by the future as now. Because at that point, the corp had 0 points, and they didn't know that this was a Rella Salvatore. So I guess hindsight is 2020. It's easy for me to sit here and say, oh, she should have ran back in. But yeah, perhaps she was just like, you know what? It's a 1-pointer. I've got better things to do. Still, though, a 1-pointer is a 1-pointer. Oh well. Alright, next game of the evening. Alright, we get to see an Az McCaffrey. I love Az. I haven't played a ton of decks with him, but he feels so honest. I really like him as a Kate replacement. You know, the single link, the ability to install jobs and connections is kind of neat. The hardware is, I think, difficult in a lot of ways to make work sometimes, but because typically runner decks don't want, like a normal deck, or what am I trying to say? A normal runner deck isn't going to be installing tons and tons of hardware, so you kind of have to tweak an Az deck to include more useful hardware. And Nisei did give a lot of low credit install costed hardware in support of Az, but I haven't really seen a lot of killer Az decks. Anyway, another building the better world as far as our corp goes. Turn 1, we see an ice over HQ, kind of signifying maybe HQ is a little agenda flooded. An ice creating a new remote, and then a beanstalk. As Blueberry Diesels, I'm not a fan of this card, but it's certainly a card. It's kind of like a poor man's Diesel. Az throws down Swift. First time each turn you play a run event, gain a click. Pretty cool, because he then follows it up. Sorry, Az is pronoun male, right? If I'm wrong about that, I'm so sorry. Anyway, he runs in using Dirty Laundry, taking effect, gaining the effect of Swift right off the bat, as well as just getting a little bit of money. Doesn't see anything useful off of R&D. And then throws down a Mantle. Mantle's a little interesting. We'll have to see how he wants to use that. On the corp's turn, he accelerates his game by drawing a card and then installing another piece of ice on the remote, followed by something in the remote. Back to Az, we see a double draw. What could he be looking for? You kind of got to think he wants to take advantage of Swift again, maybe by playing another run event somewhere. Especially, like, another Dirty Laundry would of course be perfect, but it might be unreasonable to expect him to have another one after having used one already. Okay, here we go. We see a spearfishing. So for 2 credits, you basically get a free run here, since the click is coming back from Swift, and the corp can't res this due to the spearfishing. Nice, very nice. Okay, perhaps reading that maybe the corp was a little agenda flooded, or maybe just thinking that that was the best server to go into. This does pull a Project Atlas from HQ, and then double installs 2 Penumbra toolkits. Now, this is a little questionable just because... Oh, no, it's not questionable. Wow. Actually, now that I see this card, I don't think I really ever see this used very often. It's a stealth virtual card that costs 2 credits less to install if you made a successful run on HQ. Actually, I see that. The synergy there now. So both of these were installed for free. Makes total sense. I'm silly for faulting him for doing that. That was, yeah, it makes perfect sense now to install those. The corp decides to double advance a card in server 1 and then just takes a credit. This is building a better world. I think this is the same deck we saw last time. And they're a little they're a little down on money this time. It could just be that they're not drawing their transaction of operations. We have to assume, like, what, this is another agenda and this is an Arella Salvatore. But without a bunch of money, this ice is a lot less scary. Okay, now we see a boomerang on the outermost piece of ice protecting the remote. That might have been a mistake, because... Oh, no, I'm sorry. This is spearfishing, not inside job. So no, this makes perfect sense as well. So he's going to boomerang the outermost piece of ice and then spearfish the server. And the corp is just going to choose not to res anything. This might have been a little over ambitious as far as the setup here. The corp does not have a lot of money. So both boomeranging and spearfishing might have been a bit of overkill, but you also have to think that Az installs boomerang for a credit cheaper, as well as spearfishing is gaining him back a click. But, I mean, it doesn't hurt to be overcautious. I mean, if this was a very simple end the run piece of ice that was cheap to res, it wouldn't set the corp back. Perhaps I'm just an anarch at heart where I run everything without any breakers. And you know what? Az is rewarded for this maneuver because this was just a hostile takeover. Clearly this is an Arella Salvatore. Actually, yeah, we see that here. So the corpse plan... Oh, oof. The corpse plan was to score hostile takeover, triggering Arella Salvatore, and then, you know, firing that whole domino effect. Az is making good choices here. Says, okay, I'm not going to set up anymore. Your R&D is open. You know, you're not protecting your centrals. I'm just going to run in here. Steals a Project Atlas off the top of R&D, putting Az at game point, theoretically, unless, of course, he steals another one-pointer. Runs back into R&D, doesn't see anything. Now we see a too big to fail being played, because this Building a Better World deck definitely does not care about bad pub. They're trying to win super quick off of the Arella Salvatore sort of snowball effect. It's more like an avalanche, really. So they go ahead and give the bad pub over to the runner with the stipulation that they are, of course, gaining 11 credits off of this. No, sorry, 8 credits. I'm reading the card wrong. You can only play it if you have 10 or fewer, and of course, it's a transaction, so they gain an extra credit from it. So 8 credits up can definitely res all of their ice now, can pay to res Arella Salvatore, but Az makes the proper call here and just goes right into R&D, digging for that last agenda point. This is not before, however, installing MU Safecracker. It's not a card I see terribly often. Uses hardware only by spending credits from stealth cards. Whenever you make a successful run on HQ, you may pay 1 to access an additional card. Whenever you make a successful run on R&D, you may pay 2 to access an additional card. So he does indeed, Az does indeed, spend the credit from Mantle and a single credit from the Penumbral Toolkit in order to access an extra card from R&D. This is actually pretty good synergy. Looks like he's encountered something that he's going to be able to trash. I think this user is fairly new. They didn't quite realize that the bad publicity is automatically added to their credit total when they make a run. But yeah, when you look at this, MU Safecracker is going to cost a single credit less due to Az's ID. So they spent a credit to drop this down, ran this, offset the finite number of stealth credits that they have available, because of course Penumbral Toolkit's credits don't come back, by using the single credit from Mantle, and accesses an extra card. Now they're running back into R&D, and they spend an extra 2 credits to see off of their Penumbral Toolkit to see 1 extra card, because you have to remember they hit 2 cards, trashed 1 of them, so they're hitting only 1 extra card there. And that might have been the right decision. Just kind of trying to soft R&D lock the corp. It's not going to last very long, though, because the corp decides that they are done. They are fed up with R&D being open, puts an ice on R&D, and a 3rd piece of ice protecting server 1 to make sure that no more spearfishing shenanigans can happen. Although with 2 in the bin, you have to think that the odds of a 3rd one coming are probably not super high. 2 public terminals dropped. This is starting to look like a Ken Tenma deck. But again, you can see the logic behind this, because the first public terminal is free, the second one's only a credit, and now suddenly Az can play these spearfishing, these inside jobs, these dirty laundries for free, and gain a click back for their trouble. Back to the Corp, they draw a card, advance, double advance the card in server 1. I think we know what's coming here. It's probably a Project Atlas that they're intending to score first thing next turn after rezzing their Arella Salvatore. Now, they're a little low on credits. Az kind of needs to jump in here now and do something before this combo gets started, but unfortunately, they did spend a lot of their resources sort of setting all of this stuff up that they have on the table now, so they only have 1 credit to their name, and without any breakers on the table, they're kind of stuck, because unless Az has another like an inside job would be really good right now to jump into R&D. An inside job is probably what he's looking for, would be my guess. Now Az draws a card and clicks for a credit. I'm not sure about the click for the credit. Yeah, I really have to assume, even though we haven't seen it, I really have to assume that Az is running inside job. And if I was running inside job, I would be drawing for that card and only that card, because that's going to win him the game. He can inside job into R&D, see 2 cards thanks to MU Safecracker, and potentially draw, or rather steal, the game-winning agenda. But that's fine. Perhaps he has something that costs money that he's looking to install. But his run events are free, and MU Safecracker is free. Funnily enough, though, the Corp doesn't start their Arella Salvatore combo. You would have to assume that they have that this is an agenda, that this is Arella Salvatore, but instead they draw a card and click for 2 credits. Perhaps they drew into an agenda and then they decided to wait until next turn to start the whole thing off. After image hits the table, can't remember if this is the really good one or the really bad one. Whenever you encounter a sentry... No, this one's pretty cool. It's a little expensive to install, but 2 strength is pretty nice. And then you can just pay 2 credits to bypass any sentry. But you have to spend stealth credits to do it. Obviously not good against cards like Anansi, but pretty good against most any other killer. A Bravado running into HQ sees a non-res on the HQ ice, and that could be because the Corp isn't worried about an agenda getting stolen. Perhaps there's a 1 in 5 chance and they're willing to roll the dice there. Of course, you do have to remember Az here does have MU Safecracker, so he's going to go ahead and trigger that, so that's a 2 in 5 chance, and he does hit a City Works from HQ, and it's going to be game. So I'd say that was pretty good coming from Az. Like, it kind of looked like the Corp sandbag, but of course we knew what the Corp was trying to do here. And I think at some level they kind of realized that their ice was maybe ineffective is not the right word. It could very well be that there's a killer on HQ, and having seen the after image, the Corp decided it just wasn't worth it to res that ice, or instead, this ice here could have just been merely for show, and they were saving all their credits to res the ice on this remote, desperate to protect their already advanced agenda in order to start off their Arella Salvatore combo. It's not that I don't like, or sorry, it's not that this is necessarily a terrible Corp deck. It's not, but I definitely don't like this Corp deck, kind of for this reason, because if you don't draw the cards in the right order, like this time he didn't draw quite as many transaction cards, so he didn't have the money to threaten the res on all of this ice. And if you don't draw the agendas in the right order, or heck, even if you just don't draw a Rela Salvatore, you're kind of just sitting around waiting for the combo pieces to fall into hand. And you end up sort of having a sandbag game like this. That being said, Az was proactive through this whole thing, which I really liked. It's always very easy as the runner to become afraid of taking action and starting to play solitaire. We just start setting up all your stuff on your side of the board, and before you know it, the corp has 6 points and you haven't even done anything. Instead, Az did run in when he needed to, and I really like the use of MU Safecracker here. That's definitely a good include, since he decided to go with this stealth credit setup. Yeah, pretty cool Az deck. Nothing that's going to win tournaments necessarily, but not bad by any means. We're jumping into this one a little late. Looks like we're on turn 5. Polana versus Kumalo. It looks like we jumped in right when the action was going to start, because we see a Dirty Laundry run into a remote. None of the ice on the corpse side of the board has been rezzed at all, and they only have 11 credits. So we'll have to see if they actually want to pony up and protect this remote, with the caveat that that sort of makes the ice on the centrals less likely to be rezzed. We've talked about it before, so I won't go into full detail, but of course, a good way to counter Kumalo is to keep him out of the central servers. All of the virus cards, well, not all of them, but many of the virus cards that generate tokens rely on successful runs. Yusuf here, you can see here, whenever you make a successful run, you may place 1 virus counter on Yusuf. Now, of course, that doesn't require a central run, but we are all very familiar with Data Sucker, which in turn only gains virus tokens on central runs. We're kind of stuck on this Dirty Laundry run. I don't know. It could be that the corp is needing to calculate several different things right now. Decides to go ahead and let the runner pass the outermost piece of ice. We'll have to see if he reses the innermost. No, decides to let the runner in, and we see a Lacoste grid. Okay, I can see why you wouldn't res ice to protect that. Is if the runner wants to trash that, that's 4 credits. It's not a small number of credits. Now they do gain quite a bit back due to Dirty Laundry, and this is followed up. Wait, trash is... Huh? Oh, okay, I see. This is followed up by the use of Zero, and Zero trashed a Sure Gamble. I'm sure that's not the card he wanted to trash. Presumably you would have bin breakers in hand and you want Zero to trash those, or perhaps an I've Had Worse or something like that. Regardless, they go ahead and spend the 4 credits to drop a Earthrise. Is going to give them a lot of forward draw tempo. And we go back over to the corp. We're going to have to decide how they want to move forward. Now, as the corp, in a lot of scenarios, you can't really afford to turtle up, because the longer the game goes on, typically the runner has the advantage. But again, when you're playing against Kumalo's kind of on a timer. As far as timer is the wrong word. Kumalo gets worn out if you make him go through big, thick servers. he's going to run out of virus tokens. He's going to run out of, you know, his one-off tricks, his hippos, his whatever he decides to take. And he wants to get into the centrals anyway so that he can trigger his ID ability and trash something, you know, useful, like your operations or even ice. Things that normally can't be trashed. He can trash with his ID ability. And I agree with this. I agree with this move. The Corp decides to draw and then ices HQ. And that makes a lot of sense. Especially with all of these draws, and we see no agendas. No agendas on either side of the table. You have to assume there's got to at least be an agenda in HQ. Perhaps 2 or 3. And again, protecting your centrals is... I'm going to sound like a broken record, but it's the right move against Kumalo. It's the safe move. Yeah, and again, Amakua gains a virus counter. Yeah, when you... Sorry, I'm trying to read. It's actually, surprisingly, it's been a little while since I've seen Amakua. It's anytime you access a card and do not steal or trash it. Now, you can do that in a remote, of course, but if the remote is empty, obviously you're not going to be running it to gain counters with Amakua. So again, it's another central-focused card. I can't quite say that. I mean, you could run into a server and see an asset or an upgrade and maybe not trash it and still get counters for Amakua. Anyway. I don't believe it works with archives. Whenever you expose a card or access cards and do not steal or trash any of them. Technically, though, don't you access the cards in archives? The runner apologizes. Apparently there's a secondary conversation going on about Magic the Gathering combos. Okay, and we see here again another piece of ice put on archives, kind of creating that impenetrable wall that hopes to keep Kumalo out. Now, that being said, the Corp is very low on credits. When you compare it to all of this ice, there's no way they can res all this ice. But that's not really what's important. What's important is that now, no matter which server Kumalo runs, they can't get through without the threat of 2 pieces of ice being rezzed. He's going to think twice about trying to charge up his Yusuf and his Amakua. He's got money, he's got card draw, but he has no real safe way into the servers right now. And even though Palana is low on credits, they're Palana, so they're going to gain, you know, 1 to 2 credits per round. Generally, 1 on the runner's turn, and then depending on what tricks the Corp has, perhaps 1 on the Corp's turn. Now, Deuce's Wild is played, and we're going to expose a single piece of ice, protecting HQ, seeing an engram flush. So he knows that this is in... Wait, what? I must have misread that. No. The engram flush is protecting archives, and he decides to run HQ. Runs into 2 slot machines. And due to the cards that we see off the top of R&D, there's a lot of text here. We see the first slot machine sees a program, a hardware, and a resource, so only the first subroutine fires, which is the runner loses 3 credits. And then the second time we reveal the top 3 cards of the runner's stack, we see 2 resources. So that second one loses the runner 3 credits and gains the corp 3 credits, effectively meaning that they res the second slot machine for free. However, slot machine is not going to stop the runner or anything like that. So they do get into HQ. And they access an Anansi, so no dice. And it didn't seem, yeah, they didn't have enough virus tokens to actually stop Anansi, or rather, sorry, they did not have enough virus tokens to actually trash Anansi, even though the expose effect from Deuce's Wild gave Amakua an extra counter. I believe at that point he only had 1 plus 3, so 4 counters, so he couldn't trash the Anansi. I'm sure he would have loved to. But because the run is successful into HQ, he does get a virus token on Data Sucker, Amakua, and Yusuf, putting him up to a very dangerous total of 7. But it's going to be difficult to get back into HQ without losing some serious money. He does double-click his Liberated to gain some of that money back. But now the Liberated's gone, he has to decide where he wants to go. He can't just keep going into HQ. The Corp clicked twice for credits and then used IPO to jump up to 15. And of course the runner draws, so they're at 16 now. The runner installs, Kumalo of course, installs a turning wheel, and then decides to check R&D. However, the Corp really only spent 3 credits resing these 2 pieces of ice from the last turn. And due to IPO, they have plenty of money now. Kumalo runs in and hits an Anansi. And this is going to hurt. I think he's going to live. But this is going to allow, effectively, Polana to vet the top 5 cards of R&D in any way they want. So if there is an agenda on top of R&D, obviously, you know, the Corp can hide it from Kumalo. And on top of that, is going to get to deal 4 net damage. 1 net damage due to the subroutine, and then 3 net damage because the runner didn't break all the subs. Now, what did the runner lose? Looks like lost things it kind of wanted to lose already. Well, sort of. The MK Ultra definitely, but making the Kumalo lose Stimhack and Lib accounts is not small. However, the Corp did ping and I've had worse, so 3 of those cards get replaced. The inner piece of ice here is a Thimble Rig. Not going to do a lot to stop the runner, but hey, it's something. That's broken by... Oh my goodness. Alright, so Thimble Rig is broken by Amakua, I think, is what we did there. Trying to make sure that's what happened. Yeah, but it's all for naught because poor Kumalo runs into a Cyberdex Virus Suite. Ugh. He pays to trash the Cyberdex. But boy oh boy, losing all those virus tokens hurts, especially after using the resources that he did. Well, I should say more like after losing these cards. Mostly these 2 cards, Stimhack and Lib. It's not going to be the end of the world. Kumalo isn't completely out, but it's tough. It's definitely tough. Now, this is really good. This is really good turnaround here. And really quickly, on the Corp's turn, they actually just did another click, and then an IPO, so they're back up to 13 credits. But in response, back to Kumalo, they Stimhack, rather, they drop a Hippo and Stimhack right into R&D. And they're going to Hippo that Anansi. That is not cheap. That's 8 credits in res cost lost. by the Corp, and if the Corp is really thinking, they probably should have swapped the Thimble Rig and the Anansi. Because anytime the runner passes Thimble Rig, the Corp can swap pieces of ice. Seeing an Anarch, the Corp had to have known that Hippo was a possibility. Should have protected the Anansi, didn't. Kumalo is able to get in, and suddenly things are dangerous again for the Corp. Now, Kumalo did end up trashing their Yusuf, which I guess is kind of okay. They did that because of their MU, I believe. Yusuf costs 2 MU, and they wanted to install the MK Ultra. Why did they do that? Pays 9 to increase the strength and break all the separate. Oh, doy. They had to do that in order to actually trash the Anansi, of course. And they do indeed get into R&D. Trying to find out if they... Looks like they saw an unseen card, so nothing stolen, nothing trashed. But it kind of sucks still, because with Yusuf gone, that's one less virus token that's being accrued. Yeah, they got a virus token on Amakua and a virus token on Data Sucker, but it's not a lot. And they're down to 6 credits. Partially, though, that's because they installed an Earthrise, but still. An Amakua with 1 virus counter on it isn't too scary. And intelligently, the Corp swaps Thimble Rig with the Ice on Archives in order to help protect their thinned iced R&D. They install 2 cards in server 1, send it back over to the runner, who is trying to kind of recover and stabilize their board state. Sure Gambles draws 2 cards, and Sure Gambles. They've got their money back, but all 3 Sure Gambles are in the bin, 2 live accounts are in the bin. This is what I mean, where like Kumalo kind of runs out of steam eventually. Oh no! Oh no! Okay, so our mystery card in the server was a Cyberdex Sandbox, which was only that much easier to score thanks to the Lacosta grid in the server. And of course, we know the Cyberdex Sandbox is credit neutral, on top of purging virus tokens, sweeping the meager tokens that Kumalo even had on his side of the table. Kumalo, not to be deterred though, decides to Deuces Wild, gaining another point on Amakua thanks to the expose effect of Deuces Wild. Now, he chooses not to break Thimble Rig. I think that was mainly due to wanting another counter on the turning wheel, perhaps. He goes ahead and uses Thimble Rig to end the run, throws down a medium, and then runs again. But I don't know. Wouldn't it have been better to throw the medium down first? Or perhaps he didn't want to throw down the medium because he didn't know if he'd be able to get into R&D very easily. So, but even in that case, wouldn't you still, well, okay, no, I don't think you would. All right, sorry. I'm not making a lot of sense here. I was thinking, when you run R&D, wouldn't you still want to break Thimble Rig with Amakua just to get a single virus token on it? But the Corp is really incentivized here to purge because they're going to gain 4 credits and sweep all the virus tokens off the field, so virus tokens might be easy come, easy go right now, and relying on them, banking them up, is not necessarily a game-winning strategy. He does get into R&D, but unfortunately, just kind of bad luck here. Doesn't see anything. Nothing he can trash, nothing he can steal. just sort of having a tough time. He is accruing turning wheel counters, and the medium is nice. The medium is certainly present on the table, but again, it would not necessarily be the worst move for Polana right now to just purge virus tokens. A purge would reset medium, reset the counters on Data Sucker and Amakua, and gain them 4 credits. But this is also acceptable here. Polana draws, installs another piece of ice on R&D, and then throws another card in the remote. It could be they are really eager to use the effect of this Lacosta grid. Now this is good. This is good. You remember, oftentimes we'll say here that you want to run... You don't want to run where you actually want to run first. If I was the runner, I would want to get in here to prevent the Lacosta grid from firing and prevent the Corp from getting free advancement tokens on a potential agenda. So I think what's happening here is Kumalo says, okay, I'm going to make you spend money. I'm going to run into R&D and make you show me what you have here. Or you're not going to res the ice on R&D and I'll just get in for free because you're trying to save the money for this server. Now, unfortunately, we do see 2 engram flushes, which are only 2 credits each to res. Not gonna break the bank in the corpse case in any event, but the first engram flush names event. Kumalo says, go ahead and fire it. And we see their hand actually has 0 events. So they get through the first one for free. The second engram flush names... I'm having trouble seeing what the second one names. I think it names program. Here we go. So it names program. And Kumalo lets it fire, so he loses his Angolo and his self-modifying code. But does get into R&D. And gets to see 2 cards for his trouble. We're going to trash an NGO front and steal a Nisei Mark II. That's pretty good. That's kind of the forward tempo that Kumalo needs right now. It by no means wins him the game. By no means is going to mean he can breathe easy, but there's at least a chance now, right? At this point, you have to assume the Corp is definitely going to purge on the next turn. Anything to stop those medium counters from coming in. But with 2 clicks still left on his side of the table, Kumalo decides to throw down a Hippo. Wait, no, I'm terribly sorry. Not a Hippo. A turntable. He wants to swap Cyberdex out of the Corp's score area. And in fact, if he had installed that on the last run, he would have been able to... Oh! He gets an agenda, but unfortunately it's another Cyberdex, so he's not able to swap the Cyberdex out of the Corp score area. That would have been huge if he was able to. And again, you know, as we keep saying, hindsight is 2020. If he had installed this turntable before making this run on R&D, he would have been able to swap the Nisei for the Cyberdex. And suddenly it's a lot harder for the Corp to decide to purge virus tokens. Now, due to the engram flush continuing to fire over and over again, Kumalo does lose all the cards he had in his hand, but I think that's a sacrifice he just has to make right now. That last click, he does decide to run the remote. However, we see a border control rezzed on the outermost piece of ice, and the Corp does just go ahead and fires that off to prevent Kumalo from getting into the server. Lacosta Grid is going to put a free advancement token on the card. We see a triple advance and a Nisei scored, tying up the agendas 4-4, and the exact same agendas scored and stolen. But both of these being in the corp score area, especially the Nisei with the obvious token on it, is going to complicate things quite a bit. That being said, the corp did not purge, and we have a 3-tokened medium sitting here. and they run in and they say, go ahead, fire engram flush. I have nothing in hand. Oh my goodness, we see another Cyberdex virus suite stolen, and Kumalo smartly swaps that out for the Nisei with a token, but it's all for naught because they managed to snag yet another Nisei. And that's quite the ending. Within the period of about 2 turns, the runner managed to steal 8 points. And it was all because of the engram flush here on R&D. Now I think overall the corp is playing this semi-decently, but it wasn't enough because Kamalo definitely recognized that his game was on a bit of a time limit. And he played reckless and fast, but not pointlessly. There was purpose behind this recklessness here at the end of the game, because he had to. Eventually he was going to get locked out. And I think Polana still could have and perhaps should have won this. But they didn't for a couple reasons. They never got a chance to purge. Or rather, they chose not to purge. And I'm a little confused at that, because purging would have gained them there was a time where just the Cyberdex was here in their score area, and they could have purged just for an extra 4 credits to help res some of this ice. And also, more importantly, reset the medium tokens. I can't remember exactly what they decided to do instead, but it was like semi-understandable. But I don't know about scoring this Nisei. Like, I understand you want to stop Kamala from getting in here and stealing it, because it is kind of obvious that you're advancing it slowly with Lacoste Grid. I also wonder at the Thimble Rigs on Archives, because could you not use Thimble Rig when your turn begins? Could you not have used Thimble Rig to sort of space out this ice a little better, so that you don't have these 2 engram flushes on R&D? Now, it is pretty gutsy to run against Jinteki with no cards in hand. But we didn't really see any net damage threats. So when Kamalo sees these 2 engram flushes, he correctly makes the decision to just say, okay, I just won't have any cards in my hand, and I'll just keep running R&D. And at that point, I think the Corp needed to respond to Kamalo's choice to do that. They either needed to swap up the ice so that there were no longer engram flushes on R&D, and you could do that by swapping both the Thimble Rigs over here. So like the first time the Corp sees this happen, I don't really blame them, right? You don't really know what your Kamalo opponent is going to do, but there were 2 separate turns where Kamalo did this, where he runs through R&D, not really caring about the engram flushes, clearly showing that he's not afraid of a snare, or now that Breach Dome isn't in the game, you don't even need to worry about that. And I think the Corp really wasn't threatening a flatline, and that's why Kamala felt safe to do that. And the moment that the Corp saw that, they needed to swap both these Thimble Rigs over to where the engram flush was, and then Kamala runs through here, and then as Kamala passes them, you can swap better ice in here. Now, I don't think that would have won them the game because, or rather prevented Kamala from winning the game, because didn't Kamala win on the first run of this turn. They didn't go in twice, right? Yeah. But still, it was a free R&D, effectively. But it's tough, right? There's so many things you don't know. There are so many things you can't predict. You can't predict what your opponent's going to do. Like, I'll be honest, if I was Kamalo, I don't know if I would have ran in here. I would have been afraid of the net damage, even though we haven't seen any. I would have been so paranoid. It's Jinteki. Jinteki always has net damage hidden somewhere. Oh well. That was still a fun game. It was a fun game because I think the Corp was doing what they should have been doing, but it's still, the runner played well and played to their outs and still won. Okay, next game, Blue Sun versus Haley. Ooh. Well, I mean, it is what Blue Sun does. Right out the gate, hedge fund, ice, and oversight on Tithonium. Tithonium going to let them pull back 9 credits. I was subtracting 1 due to the cost of oversight AI. Lets them pull back 9 credits should they choose, and protects R&D. They're going to have plenty of money at the start of this. You have to assume... Pardon me. You have to assume that because they didn't ice HQ, there's either no agendas in HQ, or they're bluffing. It's always a little cheeky when you've got a handful of agendas, but you pretend like you don't. Haley does what Haley does, and starts to set up, throws down Procon as well as Aesop's. So they have their 2 core resources on the table. We'll have to see what they end up doing with those, how quickly she can get set up, and if she can respond to what the Corp's doing fast enough. The Corp throws down another piece of ice on R&D. It could be the Tithonium again, we don't know. But then building blocks at Chiashi. A building block into Chiashi is such a power move. Building blocks costs quite a bit, 5 credits, but when you're using it to res a 12 credit ice for free, it's really not that bad. And when you add to the fact that Blue Sun can just pick that up for a net gain of 7 credits, it's pretty disgusting. It also ignores install costs, but that wasn't relevant here. Alright, so we're going to pick up... We are indeed going to pick up that Chiashi. Previously, Haley's still getting set up here, throws down an SMC and an Ika. I love Ika. It's not a perfect breaker by any means, but I love Ika. It is such a fun killer. A lot of Procons into the double install. Back to Blue Sun. Again, we did pick up that Chiashi, and that makes me think Blue Sun is going to try to kill Haley. I mean, what Blue Sun deck doesn't run kill as a secondary win condition? But what else are they going to do with all this money? We see another building blocks into a Chiashi on HQ. And really at this point, if they pick up this Chiashi, they are just clearly not interested in protecting HQ. And that signifies, that doesn't just signify, that just screams they want the runner to run. They want the runner to run so they can hard-hitting news into Boom, or I guess Scorched Earth is now a thing, so it might not even be hard-hitting news, it might be C-Source into Double Scorched. We are Shaper on the runner side, so it's possible we have a misdirection somewhere, which would be great against hard-hitting news, not so much against C-Source. But yeah, it's been a while since I've seen the C-Source Scorched Earth combo, mostly because, you know, Scorched Earth hasn't been in the game for years. With it back in the game, I mean, what can Haley do? But the Corp does not pick up their Chiashi. Instead, they play their third building blocks. Who draws like this? This is madness. That's some pretty dang lucky draw. Not just the fact that they drew 3 building blocks, but the fact that they had the 2 Chiashis to use it. That is insane luck. Because what's Haley gonna do against 2 Chiashis? And the Corp still has 14 credits behind this. So they go ahead, I think rightfully so, the Corp goes ahead and installs, creates a new server, double iced with something behind it. Because I don't think Haley is really going to run this, or anything really, especially back when the Corp had 24 credits for the reasons that I was just discussing, for fear of the Sea Source, Scorched Earth, or possibly Hard-Hitting News combo. So the Corp needs to score out. Haley continues to try to set up here, throws down Daily Cast, Akamatsu, Harbinger. Unsurprisingly, the Corp does go ahead and just score out their agenda. Luckily for the runner, it was only a 3-1. But Divested Trust can be rather frustrating. Thankfully, I think SDS drone deployment is removed. Hang on. Let me check that before I make a mistake. I don't remember if... Because a really nasty combo was to use Diverted Trust with SDS deployment, forcing the runner to trash 4 programs. Actually, I gotta make sure it... Is SDS 2 programs or just... No, I'm thinking of Degree Mill. No, SDS deployment is only 1 program, but that's still bad enough. So effectively with Divested Trust, you force the runner to tag SDS twice, forcing them to trash 2 programs. And no, I misspoke. It is not on the ban list, so that's very possible what the Corp is trying to do here. We'll have to see what agendas they actually have. Anyway, Hyperdriver popped by Haley, followed by the not atypical in any way quadruple Procon. Couple useful cards hit the table. Decides to ditch the Caldera. That makes sense. You're not really going to ever see net damage out of Wayland unless it's from Mausolus. Caldera not going to be very useful in this matchup. Haley's getting set up. They have a decent amount of money to their name, 14 credits. Plus those 2 daily casts is going to be very nice. Aesop's selling things away. Haley's getting there. But still, these Chiashis are not going to be free to break through. Oh my goodness. So a piece of ice on archives followed by a preemptive action is going to shuffle all 3 of those building blocks right back into R&D. Which means that potentially in the future, Blue Sun has the option to pick up these Chiashis again and just put them right back out, gaining 7 credits net anytime they do that. Not broken by any means. When you think about it, it's a 2-turn combo, or 2-click combo. So 2 clicks for 7 credits. It's still good money. A Tithonium is revealed to have been protecting RD. That's probably that same Tithonium from the very beginning. Blue Sun drops down to 2 credits to do this, but that's fine because they can always... Interesting. They can always pick a up again in order to get that money back. Now, Formicary is rezzed off of archives, forcing the runner to encounter it on their indexing run. But the runner has Ecaw, so they go ahead and attach that to Formicary, break it, get through. They still have 13 credits. The indexing run is successful, and they're going to come right back in. Presumably after an agenda. But we still have this divested trust, so the Corp has the option of pitching divested trust to prevent the runner from stealing this if they want to make them run through Tithonium and Formicary one more time. Here it is, the SDS drone deployment. And that's an SMC trash. And surprisingly, the Corp does not divested trust it. I don't know if that's because they just feel like the runner had the money to get back in, so they didn't want to try, but yeah, I don't know. Anyway, Formicary is picked up for 2 credits. The reason for that could be that they want to install it on archives again and throw it into another server whenever they want to, effectively bypassing the installation cost. Because think about if instead the runner picked up Tithonium, they would get 9 credits, yeah, but they would have to spend an extra credit to install it in front of the Formicary, whereas by installing Formicary over here, they don't have to pay the installation cost. It is kind of funny because Blue Sun seemed like they were in such a powerful position early on. Oh, hey, Dunge. How you been, man? But yeah, it's funny because Blue Sun seemed like they were in such a powerful position early on. But now they're not struggling, they're not like drowning, but they're low on credits. And of course they can get this money back pretty much instantly by picking up any of these high-costed ice. But in kind of a cheeky move, I missed this, but they actually picked up the Formicary, which caused the Ecaw to be trashed, allowing Formicary to fire here on this legwork run. So we see 2 net damage, taking a Rozeki and a Clot out of Haley's hand. Now, if Haley runs Simulchips, Clot being in the bin isn't necessarily the worst thing in the world. Thanks, Dunch. Pretty good. Things have been crazy hectic lately. But hey, if I'm busy, it means I'm not dead, right? Alright. Anyway, the legwork sees a building blocks, a Formicary, and archive memory, which is just kind of unfortunate. Of course, you hope to at least snag one agenda, at the very least, from a legwork run. However, picking up the Chiashi in front of HQ and then using building blocks allows Blue Sun to build kind of a super remote here, where the drop City Works behind it. Even unadvanced City Works is going to cost 2 meat damage to steal. On their next turn, they drop a piece of ice in front of HQ and double advanced city works. Haley's got a bit of a puzzle here to solve. Now they have money, and they're pro-conning up for even more stuff. And this is nice. We see the misdirection dropped. This is going to add a lot of protection against the potential hard-hitting news. Which, funnily enough, we didn't see any tagging cards from that legwork run into HQ earlier. But the archive memories kind of signifies to me... I don't know, I guess the archive memories doesn't necessarily signify boom, but I feel like it's all too common to click one archive memories, pull boom out of the bin, and then boom the runner. We'll have to wait and see though. We don't actually see a lot of cards in the corpse bin. Anyway, the corp is able to still go ahead and score Cityworks project. Haley is still trying to get set up here. Her credits are really ballooning, partly helped by Aesop's sales, partly helped by Procon. She's going to get to the point where she can definitely get in wherever she needs. It's really Chiashi that we need to factor in the cost for. And Corroder is a good breaker. But Chiashi is still going to cost... what is it, 9 credits? That's insane. Let's see. Oh, but see, if you watch me play, then I'll have to reveal how terrible of a player I actually am. I think he's playing on Punitive with a double steal and diverse, so he can theoretically 6. Yeah, that would make sense. I really need to set up the Twitch stream so people's chat appears on the screen so people know post-stream what people are saying. But Duncheer is bringing up that it's also possible to use Divested Trust to double down on a Punitive by having the runner steal, quote, air quotes, the same agenda twice, doubling the damage that Punitive does. Archive memories here is used to pull building blocks. Okay. I mean, if Blue Sun feels like they need that. It seems primarily like that was done just for the money, though, because they install Chiashi right back where it was. Interestingly, they create another blank remote. Perhaps this is another Formicary. This corp seems to really like the Formicary interaction. Indexing from Haley goes into R&D. Gonna have to get past the Tithonium, but Tithonium is scary if you don't have a barrier breaker. But it's not that expensive to get through, especially with Corroder. It's only... well, I say only 6 credits. I guess 6 credits is still a lot. But considering it's 9 to res unless you forfeit an agenda, it feels like 6 is not very much sometimes when you're playing as the Corp. Anyway, double Formicary is res. That was a Formicary over here in the remote. And that's going to make Ika a lot more troublesome to use, but probably more importantly, is that Blue Sun is just going to pick up the Formicary that Ika is on. And this is why, even though I love Ika, it's tough sometimes to use in situations like this. And this is pretty rough, because you're having to pay 2 credits each time you want to swap Ika to another piece of ice. And this gets expensive. If you can keep an Econ hosted on a sentry, it's very, very cheap to break the sentry. But the moment you start having to swap Econ around, it gets pretty expensive. Especially for these, honestly, what are kind of weak sentries in general. You don't want to be swapping around to a lot of weak sentries like this. But it is 3 credits, I suppose. Because Ika has a strength of 2, and it's only 1 to break the subroutine. Anyway, the indexing run does end up being successful. The second run in sees another SDS. What did we trash? We trashed the misdirection, and perhaps that is a wise... Well, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. We haven't seen any pieces for a boom tag, kind of tag storm sort of thing yet. So I guess there hasn't been anything to tip off that that is what Blue Sun is doing. I would just feel personally kind of nervous about pitching misdirection. In fact, I think instead I would have trashed the Econ, because you know Blue Sun's going to pick this up anyway to trash your Econ. Yeah, I agree, Dunch. It does seem like it is an anti-Econ device, this Formicary. And you were right. We see the punitive. So I suppose getting rid of misdirection really doesn't matter. It's not going to be tags. It is the divested trust into punitive. The runner is a little surprised at this interaction. Not that I can blame them. It's not something you see in every game. But because SDS was a 3-point agenda, we're going to see a trace, and no, we're not really even going to see a trace contestation, because the runner doesn't even have anywhere close to the number of credits needed to prevent the punitive trace. So not only do you force the runner to trash a program, you prevent them from stealing it. You get paid 5 credits for pitching divested trust. You don't get the agenda, and then the corp blows you up with punitive. Now, admittedly, did Haley have time to respond to this? Yeah, she double procon and then pitched a diesel? Wait a minute. Oh, but it didn't matter because there were 2 punitives. I missed that. I see. So a single punitive from hand. Oh, no, I didn't miss it. It just hadn't happened yet. So a single punitive from hand, and then a consulting visit to pull the second punitive. So even though Haley had 5 cards in hand, it's a total of 6 net damage. With Haley down to 3 credits, she didn't have enough to threaten the corp. Traces are kind of fun like that. Like, you don't even need, as the runner, to spend the credits necessarily. You just need to have them. Because then if the corp actually wants to win against you, they have to spend enough money, of course, to beat you on the trace, especially in these scenarios where they have to trace you twice. Even having just a couple more credits can thwart the corp's plan. Like, if Haley had, I think, 4 more credits, the corp couldn't have done this. But she didn't know. I certainly didn't see it coming. I was stuck on the, oh no, Blue Sun is going to tag Haley plan, but no, it was indeed punitive. Well, that's cool. Something to look out for. I kind of like to see punitive, you know? Scorch Earth, boom, those are fun. But punitive, there's something about punitive that is just more exciting. I think it's because the Corp is punishing the runner for having stolen an agenda. Although, of course, in our case, they didn't actually steal it due to divested trust. And we're jumping into this game on turn 5, but wow, it looks already... Oh no, this is a one-pointer. I was gonna say, it looks like it's already off to a quick start, but no, this is sports metal. Of course, we have high agenda densities in sports metal. Not surprising to see a lot of agendas, or well, 2 agendas on turn 5. Another Haley deck. I will admit, I'm a little tired of seeing Haley, but that's fine. What are you gonna do? We have a lot of ice on the side of sports metal unresed, and another card is installed in server 1, as well as a new piece of ice, bringing our total up to 3. Lastly, an IPO. Subliminal messaging, gaining the Corp a bit of money. Well, a single credit. But hey, a credit's a credit. Haley continues to play solitaire, which is a little questionable. We see 3 simul chips at the table. It's not that simul chips are bad, but it is a little interesting. But perhaps it's because this is a res de-res deck. We're certainly, it might not be a de-res deck, but we're certainly seeing here the runner is trying to pressure the Corp whenever they res ice, and that's due to Reyna here increasing the cost to res ice by 1, and then Hernando Cortez will increase the cost to res ice by 1 for each subroutine if the Corp is at 10 credits or more. Oh no! Oh no! This is a Sansan grid. Was this here before? Did I miss this? When did the Sansan hit the table? Oh wait, there it is. Turn 7, last turn. I think is where we saw that. So the Sansan is just making things that much easier for Sports Metal to score out. Of course, every time an agenda is scored or stolen by Sports Metal, or while Sports Metal is your ID, you can gain 2 credits or draw 2 cards. So Sports Metal is just getting a lot of tempo off of these agenda scores. Even though they're all 1-pointers, it doesn't matter, they're at game point. And that Sansan is just sitting here, and again, Haley is continuing to play solitaire. I think they just lost the game. Clot does hit the table. Okay, okay. That's pretty good. This was done through the trashing of Palangi, I believe, and the use of Simulchip. So now Sports Metal is in a little bit of a bind. But I don't think it matters too much because they have a fully iced server here. Ah, okay, so this is the dedicated processor. Wait, I thought this was Deus Ex. This is an Ankusa? Wait, what is going on here? Okay. So, the Corp is above 10 credits. Pardon me. Above 10 credits, Hernando Cortez is going to increase the cost of Drafter by 2, and Reyna is going to increase it by 1. So in order to install this Drafter... Sorry, in order to res this Drafter... Wait, where did Drafter go? What happened? Wait. Oh, Ankusa. Okay. Let's figure this out. Let's figure out what the runner is doing. If you use Ankusa to break all subroutines on a barrier during a single encounter, add that barrier to HQ. Oh, it was painted. It was painted as a barrier by Palangi. Ah, and the dedicated processor. I'm sorry. I thought this was a different combo. I thought this was the Deus Ex. The Deus Ex. It's not the dedicated processor. It's the one that looks very similar, where you click to break a subroutine, and you can add it. It's a 5-cost piece of hardware. It ended up not mattering because, again, Haley took too long to get set up. The Sansan grid coupled with forward memento from Sports Metal allowed them to score out the first 6 points very fast, and then due to Gatekeeper, Haley wasn't able to get through the remote. But really quickly, let's rewind and kind of look at what Haley was trying to do. For starters, I think there was way too much setup going on here on Haley's side of the table, but I also have to look at what her strategy was, and I don't think she had another option, because this deck is very geared. Look, you even see Peace in Our Time. Whenever you see Peace in Our Time in a runner deck, it's kind of a tip-off that they are not interested in the early game. Especially data foldings. These data foldings take a long time to pay off, like a really long time to pay off, compared to other cards like Daily Cast or Hedge Fund. The DJ Fenris into Reina Roja, Hernando Cortez to increase the res cost. This is a very slow deck, a very slow, but once it gets set up, it's probably a chokehold deck of some kind. It's just odd. I haven't seen, well, really any Haley decks that use DJ Fenris and Hernando Cortez. I think the logic behind it is because you're painting everything into a barrier with Palangi. You're breaking it with Onkusa, which has increased strength due to dedicated processor. Because the problem with Onkusa is it has 0, well, among many problems with Onkusa, its high install cost is prohibitive, as well as its insanely high cost to break barrier subroutines at 2 credits per 1 subroutine. But if you can manage to get Onkusa to work, you can paint any ice with Palangi, break it with Onkusa, bounce it back to HQ. The Corp then scrambles to reinstall it. They have to spend a whole click to install it. And then if they want to re-res it, Reina and Hernandez are hurting that. Yeah, dedicated on Mimic is... Mimic is already pretty good. And then you lose its greatest weakness, which is, of course, its inability to boost. Yeah, 3 Rizekis and 3 data foldings is hard to play against as the Corp, but generally speaking, like, if you let the runner... Of course, every game is going to be its unique thing, so, like, not everything can be looked at in a vacuum. But generally speaking, if you are playing against a Corp, and you let them get 3 Rizekis and 3 data foldings on the table, and you let them keep them long enough that they pay themselves off, you kind of have to ask yourself what you were doing as the Corp the entire time they were doing that. Like, I think Corps generally should shoot to try to win around by turn 10. Of course, that's going to change depending on your deck. Black Tree decks tend to run slower than that. But I think generally, if you're going for a competitive deck, if your deck can't win by turn 10, it's probably too slow. And cards like Data Folding and Rizeki are barely going to have paid off by turn 10 compared to other economy cards. I mean, I guess if they install it like on turn 1, it'll definitely be paid off by that time. I don't know. I tend to be pretty negative towards data folding. I know a lot of people believe in it. Oops. I think this is an empty server. Alright, new game, Sports Metal again. Wow, this is already turn 7. Let's see if we can get into an earlier game. Or a game that hasn't quite had so many turns pass. Rozeki seems pretty good. I know it's only a credit difference, but I don't know. I guess people can go over the numbers. People have gone over the numbers over and over again. But in spite of the number of times they've been discussed, I still enjoy thinking about them. So when you think about, it also depends on how you consider the cost of clicks and credits, right? Some people like to consider a click to be worth a credit. Other people like to consider it to be worth 2 credits or a credit and a half, depending. But in general, a daily cast is going to pay out 5 credits. Or perhaps only 4 if you count the click that it costs to install. With the stipulation that it takes 4 turns for that payout to happen. But at the end of 4 turns, you've got 4 credits. Whereas if you install a data folding, at the end of 4 turns, you're still -2 if you count the click to install as a credit. Wait, no, I can't do math apparently. They say never to do math on a stream. I think this is why. Okay, hang on. You spend a click to install data folding, and data folding costs 3. So at the end of 4 turns, you've broken even. Whereas with daily cast, you've got 4 credits up. So in 4 more turns after that, data folding is only just as good as a daily cast. And then every click after that, starting on turn 9, it's better than a daily cast. While I was babbling here, I kept hoping, I was thinking we were going to see another game created. Yeah, I don't know. I think at least people can agree that if a click at the very worst is worth a credit. If a click is worth 2 credits, then the math gets even harder to justify, but I guess it really doesn't matter as long as you're using the same cost to calculate both cards. Rozeki just being a credit cheaper lets you start getting paid out a turn earlier, but of course it comes at the cost of having MU. Which is why you see a lot of Akamatsu mem chips. Which in turn, the click cost of installing an Akamatsu mem chip is offset by... Wait, did this get created? I thought new games got added to the bottom. Yeah, here we go. The click cost of installing an Akamatsu mem chip is offset by Haley's ability to install a card for free, except you also have to think Akamatsu costs a credit to install, so you're right back at the same calculations you would need to use when looking at a data folding. But I guess with data folding, you need... This is just going on and on. Shut up, Chesney. All right. We're in another game. We see Kumalo versus NBN. Controlling the message, NBN. So get ready for the asset spam. Turn 1, 2 new remotes. The corp was laughing here, saying that once Kumalo gets Yusuf, Kumalo gets to be off to the races. Third remote created on the last click by the Corp. Kumalo sure gambles and drops what is probably going to be a pretty relevant card in this matchup, a Consume. It's going to allow Kumalo to, if they choose to start trashing some of these assets, they'll be able to generate some of that money back, assuming that they either take the credits before the Corp's turn or the Corp chooses not to purge. Kumalo safety checks server 2 and sees a Malia. Safety checks server 3 and sees a DBS. DBS rezzed. Oh no. And a Turtlebacks hits the table. Turtlebacks, why are you back in the game, man? Why are you here? Understanding that Turtlebacks is a valuable asset, controlling the message ices Turtlebacks to prevent Kumalo from just running in and trashing it. Kumalo decides to check the last unknown server, sees a Jeeves model Bioroid. This is after having thrown down a daily cast. Double draw will end out their turn. Back to CTM. DBS is helping them filter everything, so they're getting to put back cards they don't want and keeping a card they want on the mandatory draw. Another draw is followed by a double install of 2 new remotes. And you have to think, CTM probably isn't agenda flooded due to DBS. But maybe one of these is an agenda. Perhaps thinking the same thing, Kumalo throws down Paladin Poemu and runs and grabs the Remastered Edition. That's a good one to get. And then sees a Rashida. Gets to trash that for a single credit, is going to fight, or rather see the trace from CTM, doesn't fight it, and then shakes the tag. And we do finally see a virus token on Consume, which is going to allow Consume to get started. Malia gets res. What does Malia even do? This is one you don't see too often. When you res Malia, choose an installed non-virtual resource. Oh, right. This is the one that blanks a card. So what card did he blank? He blanked he blanked Daily Cast. That's mean. Alright, so Daily Cast isn't going to get its money. Kumalo's stuck at 3 credits this time. 2 more remotes hit the table. And Kumalo's not gonna let CTM get away with any agendas being installed naked like this. Runs them both, sees a DBS and a Sansan. That Sansan makes me nervous. It means that once CTM gets the money, they'll be able to fast advance, you know, any 3 to advance agenda. Turtlebacks finally starting to pay itself off here after these 2 most recent cards were installed. 2 credits are coming back off of that. Now we're seeing profit as each new remote is generating the Corp another credit. The Corp did res DBS, their second copy though, so they are down to 3 credits. They create a new server. You have to assume, what would this be? Perhaps an agenda? Doesn't matter. Kumalo's on the warpath and throws down medium and hits R&D 3 times. Uses their ID to trash team sponsorship at no cost. And a single virus token. And sees a Project Beal for their trouble. Not too bad. This aggressive play is serving them well. Of course, Kumalo does get to have a bit of a heyday here because, as we were going on and on about earlier, Kumalo struggles when the centrals are iced, but with completely open centrals, he's free to run in here, trash whatever he wants, generate virus tokens. We're not seeing any on-run virus token generators just yet. It is revealed that our protected card here, the mystery protected card, is a Mamba Temple. It is rezzed for a credit, and then the credits are used off of it to res Enigma for a credit. But the corp is a bit poor now, so they go ahead and run. The runner goes ahead and runs R&D again, banking on the corp being unable to res this piece of ice. They do not res. The medium run is going to see a total of 3 cards. Kamalo trashes another team sponsorship. That is big. Like, team sponsorship is a very frustrating card to play against, but with 2 of them in the bin already, that's going to significantly cut back on the asset recursion. However, in spite of that medium dig seeing 3 cards, we don't see another agenda. Consume is starting to build up some money here. Another Mamba Temple is rezzed. The credits are taken off of that in order to res the Jeeves. However, this is Kamalo we're talking about, so he doesn't need 5 credits to trash that. He runs, hits the Jeeves, pays 2 virus tokens off of medium, doesn't fight the trace, probably just wants to shake the tag off that. Runs server 7, mystery server, no, not mystery server, this is the Sansan. Not sure, I think he knew this was a Sansan, yeah, he realizes his mistake. And then decides to take the consume tokens, gaining 8 credits, and shakes the tag. All in all, in a pretty good spot, but CTM is kind of getting ready to pop off. Not 100%, especially because the loss of Jeeves and the prevention of the team sponsorships is going to make this more difficult for them. And they don't quite have that second turtlebacks yet. But the 2 Mamba Temples are going to allow them to res a lot. Just a lot in general. And Kamalo has to pick and choose what he wants to contest. Has not contested the open Mamba. And doesn't have the code gate breaker to get through the Enigma. 2 more servers dropped down by CTM. Kamalo decides to take a bit of time off to set up. Double draws. No, I'm sorry. Draws, plays I've Had Worse, draws again, and then drops an Earthrise, pitching MK Ultra and Paperclip. No code gate breaker yet, though. Here we see the second Turtlebacks. It's going to be very big. I feel like 1 Turtlebacks is pretty good, but 2 Turtlebacks is amazing. And yeah, we do see here, finally the Corp is starting to get some forward tempo on their credits. Up to 9, 4 free credits off Mamba Temple whenever they want. Jeeves is rezzed, so an extra action when they need it. Or rather, when they commit to 3 actions. Ha! Wow. That's good news for Kamalo. They hit the 3rd team sponsorship. There's going to be no recursion coming from team sponsorship in this game. I'm a little confused. There was a run on Jeeves, but was another Jeeves res? The runner spends a click to run server 12, accesses Jeeves, but doesn't trash it, and then shakes the tag. I'm not sure what that run was there for. It doesn't matter. Maryland is revealed, res for free with the Mamba credits, I'm sure. Yeah. Pays to res Maryland. Another card dropped. It is another Malaya. What are we going to blank this time? Earthrise Hotel? Yeah, I'm going to have to zoom out. Piece of ice protecting the Sansan at 7. And a new remote. Back to the runner. The runner's in a bit of a tough spot because this is really where CTM is getting their forward momentum. Now, if the runner can steal, if this even exists in CTM's deck, if the runner can steal a 3-pointer, perhaps a degree mill, I guess SSL is no longer in the game, so that's not an option. Then, of course, the runner can win this. Otherwise, they're going to have to steal 2 more agendas. Now, the Corp does not have any agendas yet. But Kamalu is pushed out of R&D when they hit a toll booth. The 8 credit res cost doesn't really hurt the Corp because 2 of them twice over, so 4 is offset due to Mumba. And they're just going to gain more back when they install cards due to turtlebacks. And poor Kamala is going to miss 3 credits due to the toll booth. And now an AR enhanced security is rezzed, which is just really going to make this tough. The first time each turn Kumalo trashes a card, he's just going to take a tag. This is really going to go downhill from here. A double run on Archives is going to generate 2 virus tokens on Data Sucker, and Parasite is dropped on the toll booth. That's probably wise. The idea is likely to come in here, drop toll booth's strength down to low enough so that Parasite can just chew right through it. The Corp installs a card in the Sansan server and puts another piece of ice in front of it. Kumalo, meanwhile, runs Archives 2 more times, runs into the toll booth. He is going to lose those 3 credits on encounter, but we're going to drop the strength of toll booth down to 1. Parasite is going to chew through it, and now we have access into R&D again. Good move by Kamalo. Definitely playing to his outs. Especially with the medium on the table, we're going to be able to see potentially 2 to 3 cards here if the top card can be stolen 3 or trashed in this case. So we are going to see 3 cards. We see Rashida on the first run. Now there's going to be 2 cards accessed. A Turtlebacks, which is going to be trashed using Kamalo's ID ability. The first card was unknown, I believe. No, the second card was unknown. The first card was the Turtlebacks. Things are starting to slip out of Kamalo's control. He's taken tags. The Corp is able to Sansan score a Bologna. And this was through Jeeves' extra click plus the lowering of the advancement cost of Bologna by 1 due to Sansan. But Kamalo essentially has maybe 1 or 2 more turns to somehow pull a win out of this. Now he clicks twice for credits. I don't know if that's the right call. I feel like you would want to just run R&D 4 times. But he clicks twice for credits. Runs R&D twice, sees a total of 4 cards on that last run. Unfortunately, nothing stealable. At least, perhaps you can take solace in knowing that... Wait a minute. He clicked up to 5 credits so that he had enough money to steal Bologna. Oh, gosh. And yeah, Dunch, you're quicker than I am. Every time I make a mistake and then realize that, I make sure to check the chat because you've usually pointed it out by then. Yeah, so the 5 credits was to steal any potential Bolognas, so that definitely makes sense then. And Kumalo still might have had a decent chance of winning, except a new piece of ice is put on top of R&D. And at this point, Kumalo is full on tag me. Oh, but hey, slot machine is porous. This probably isn't the worst thing ever, although it does mean that Bolognas are no longer stealable. And we're seeing a ton of cards off of R&D here. But a remastered edition is stolen. Amani Senai, well, I didn't mention this earlier, but Amani Senai is adding cards to Kamalo's hand, but I don't know if he really cares that much. He's full on tag me. He doesn't really have much of a board state right now. An effect caused partially by the blanking of cards by Malia, although the Earthrise that Malia blanked is no longer on the table. But also the effect of Amani. But if Kumalo can just manage to get in there and steal the last card. Unfortunately, though, Amani did add medium to Kumalo's hand, so he clicks up probably in anticipation of needing to install medium again. And the runner does even say here that they feel like they misplayed, that they should have trashed the Amani, thereby preventing the corp from adding medium back to their hand. Back to Kumalo, they decide to try their luck with HQ. There is a card in the Sansan remote, and if it's another 3-pointer, the game's over. IP block, though, has a hard end the run due to the runner being tagged. This is probably the last turn. Oh my goodness. You have got to be kidding me. So assuming that this was a 3-pointer, the corp had won on the next turn. Now, it could have been a 2-pointer. We do see here Beal and Remastered, which means there's probably another Beal and or another Remastered somewhere. There's probably 2 more Arieses. Aries is just a good, almost too good of an agenda in CTM. But hey, Kumalo tried it. And got through with the skin of their teeth. That's the second Kumalo win we've seen today. No, I didn't even think about that either. The 2 daily business shows here were filtering the deck for CTM this entire game. That's pretty good overall. By the runner, I feel like they kept their cool much more than I do when I play against asset spams. I tend to panic and either try to trash everything or trash nothing. I certainly could learn a lot from this, though. Systematically, let's take a quick look at what Kamala actually did here. Systematically, he focused on team sponsorship to prevent the recursion, which that much makes a lot of sense. I've even said that earlier in some of our commentary where, the runner doesn't focus team sponsorship, and so anything they trash ends up not mattering. They also hit the Jeeves, and they were able to do that due to their Kumalo ID. So instead of having to spend 5 credits, they just spent 2 virus tokens. A normal runner probably isn't going to be able to do that at the low credit count the Kumalo was. Because 5 credits is pretty hefty. But otherwise, yeah, just kind of picked and chose the best things to trash for the situation that they were in. Trashed the turtlebacks later. Didn't fight the Mamba Temples, and I think that was wise because at the point where the Mamba Temples hit the table, they were kind of like the Corp had snowballed past Kamalo. So if Kamalo wasted a bunch of time trying to trash these, it would have been too much effort for too little reward. He did say that he probably should have trashed the Imani, though. But it ended up not mattering. Luck ended up being on the runner's side. Okay, new game, SSO versus Eddie Kim. Been a while since I've seen an SSO. SSOs tend to run hard and fast, kind of living or dying by turn 5 or 6. Yeah, I'm with you, Dunch. I try to hit centrals, but I never feel like I'm fast enough, and then things just spiral out of control. Alright, respecting the fact that Eddie Kim probably wants to get into the centrals, we see 2 pieces of ice, one each protecting the main centrals. 2 hostile takeovers have already been scored. The Corp is sitting pretty at 17 credits, but we'll have to see if Eddie Kim can take advantage of the 2 bad pub that they have to use. Tripano, kind of the parasite replacement. Interesting. I think people typically consider Parasite to be the superior card. So I wonder if there is a reason that Tripano is being used instead. The difference being is that Tripano will trash a piece of ice when Tripano itself has 5 virus tokens. There is no strength versus virus token interaction. Kim doesn't have a lot on the board right now. He has a lot of money. Both the Corp and the Runner actually have a lot of money. But the Corp seems like in a better spot right now. They've got a City Works project on the table, protected by 2 pieces of ice, one of them triple advanced, as well as a total of 2 ice on their important servers to make sure that Eddie Kim stays out and doesn't get those Kim trashes. Swapping back over to Corp on their turn, they triple advance City Works, and I think Kim is just a little too slow here. Yeah, we see a lot of peace in our times, and I don't, especially against SSO, because every turn that these advanced, sorry, no, they don't even have to be advanced. Every turn that these pieces of ice are on the table, that the Corp has these face-up agendas, we're just getting these free advancement tokens. You really have to play hard and fast against SSO. Border control is immediately rezzed on the remote and immediately popped to prevent the runner from getting in. Dedication ceremony is used on what? Oh, on City Works, of course. And that's probably going to be game. There's a good chance that this ice is space ice, but even if it isn't, even if it's like a Mausolus, or heck, even a Colossus. Of course, Colossus, does Colossus have a hard end the run? It might if you triple advance it. But anyway, we do see the Mausolus, because it's triple advanced, it does have a hard end the run at the end of its subroutine. However, Kim does manage to get in. They drop their Black Orchestra. break through Mausolus, take the net damage. So good move on their part. Another card is installed in our remote. Kim decides to go back in and check it. SSO has the money to res the Whoredom on the outside, which kind of signifies that perhaps this is an agenda? Why else would the Corp res this ice? No, it's just Rashid Jaheim. How did Kim get in there for so little money? Oh, the security nexus. Okay, so it's late. Poor Chesney is not thinking quickly right now, or catching things. So Kim dropped a security nexus, so he's tracing some of this ice to get in for free, which I think makes more sense now why the Corp res this, because you want to get rid of the security nexus trace so that your second piece of ice actually costs the runner money. Security nexus is trace 5, but we see a link coming from the Archivist plus a link coming from Eddie Kim. So if the Corp doesn't boost that trace, Kim can bypass ice for 3 credits. Another run on the remote allows the Corp to pitch a hostile takeover in order to res an archer. Oh, and something else to consider is that trace. 2 of those credits can come from... Well, 3 now. 3 credits can come from the bad pub. Was a mining accident played? No, mining accident isn't in the game anymore, is it? Why does the runner have more bad pub? Oh, okay, Too Big to Fail was probably played. So yeah, Kim doesn't actually spend any money on bypassing ice as long as the Corp doesn't boost the trace due to the bad pub. Now, run on HQ does see an attitude adjustment. Kim trashes that with his ID ability. We kind of have what is sort of a normalized game, which this game state doesn't tend to enter into with SSO. SSO is usually a Corp that wins really quickly or loses really quickly, but instead we are on turn 12. And it's difficult to say who's going to win this. The Corp is on game point, assuming, of course, that they don't run any more 1-pointers, because we see all 3 hostiles on the board, but that's 4 bad pub. So Kim just looks at the first piece of ice and says, I can get that through that for free. Perhaps futilely, SSO reses the Whoredom protecting R&D. Black Orchestra is used to break all the subs on Whoredom. And we have to hope, of course, here, yeah, that this ice here is res. Triple advance does mean that only 1 subroutine can be broken. Oh, but okay, I was a little confused because only 1 subroutine can normally be broken on Aked. And I was looking for where the advancement token was placed, but what actually happened was Kim bypassed it with security nexus. So it doesn't really matter that it has those 3 advancement tokens. Now, Kim runs the remote in order to install MK Ultra, pays 12 to break Archer. Does he want to hippo it? I think that's what's happening here. So Kim is preemptively hippoing Archer. Probably because if SSO installed another card on the outside of this server, he would protect it from being hippoed. He would protect the archer from being hippoed. And Kim doesn't want that to happen. Is Kayame Grid banned? The grids, I always have a hard time keeping all the grids straight. Oh, okay. And the corp is pointing this out, but you can't actually use hippo if you've already broken another ice's subroutines this turn. It says the first time you break all subroutines on the outermost piece of ice, Kim had already broken Whoredom. Since he can't do that, he decides to go into HQ after installing a parasite on Aket. I don't know, is Aket really what you want to parasite? Oh, wait a minute. So this Kim deck runs both Tripano and Parasite. That's fun. That's a lot of viruses being attached to ice. We need Magnet. Somebody needs to run Magnet against this guy. And just suck up all of the Tripanos and Parasites. Anyway, a run on HQ accesses a preemptive action. Kim trashes that with his ID ability. I'm sure that's going to hurt the corp because, especially against a Kim, you know, preemptive action is kind of like your trump card. You can use it to pull back something valuable if Kim trashes it, but now that it's in the bin, it's no longer the case. Kim does make that run on the remote. This time is able to hippo archer, and then he jacks out. Why did he jack out? Oh, to get the bad pub back. Okay, I can understand that then. Yeah, so he ran, broke archer, killed it, and then jacked out, and then ran again to get in with the bad pub. SSO concedes, and I think I can kind of see why. He does bow out gracefully. But I think at this point, he's probably kind of lost. He's lost a lot of ice here to Tripano, and is gonna lose Aket to Parasite, as well as Hippo just broke Archer. I think stealing the last piece, or sorry, scoring the last agenda is going to be kind of difficult, because where SSO shines the most is in the early parts of the game, where you get that forward edge on the runner, and you just have those face-up agendas that are constantly generating those advancement tokens on face-down pieces of ice, because I believe you can only put the advancement tokens on face-down ice. When your turn ends, you may choose a piece of ice with no advancement tokens on it. No, I'm completely mistaken. It's just the agenda has to be face-up. Place one. I'm thinking of space ice. It's space ice that you basically can only get a benefit from if they're face down. However, this SSO deck does not seem to run space ice. The Archer was a little surprising. Kind of makes sense though. Archer's just an all-around good sentry, and if you're running one-pointers anyway, it's probably fine if you pitch one to Resin Archer. The border control, also just kind of a good Wayland barrier. Yeah, but I think just in general, kind of SSO was slipping downhill. Kim had their money. They had a lot of money coming in from these daily casts. Rizeki was generating the money. The Bad Pub was probably what was killing SSO the most, though. There's 4 free credits. When you think about that, like, Kim ran, trashed Archer, and then ran again. It's more money than a dirty laundry. 4 credits on each run. So unless there was a fast advance option, let's see here. We see attitude adjustment, red level. What would they call consulting visit pull? I wonder. Digital rights management. Yeah, I don't know. Unless the Corp could fast advance something, I think Kim probably had this. Oh well. It's super late. I gotta get to bed. So Dunch and anyone else out there watching, thank you as always. It's always fun just to look over some good Netrunner games, and of course everyone who played these games. Thank you for keeping the Netrunner community alive. Anyway, see you later, and have a good evening.